Hey everybody, this is Andre here covering for Kevin on the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video, we're going to be going over some pros and cons for the 2021 version of the Motorola Moto G Stylus. Let's get started. So the first pro of this phone is the fingerprint scanner. Now most phones these days have a fingerprint scanner either on the display or somewhere on the back of the phone here, or in the case of a phone like the iPhone, they don't even have one at all. But this phone actually has the fingerprint scanner on the power button. And I think that's great. When you're going to unlock your phone, whether you use a passcode, face unlock, or another fingerprint scanner, you're bound to be pressing the power button anyway. So having the actual fingerprint scanner itself on the power button makes it so much easier because you're going to be able to unlock your phone in one motion. And really, I don't think there is a faster way to do it. So right now, the phone is completely locked and it's unlocked. That took absolutely no effort, not even a second thought. I think having the fingerprint scanner on the power button itself is the best possible location for it, and I wish more phones had this. Now the first con of this phone is the display. Now this phone has a 6.8-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 386, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 84.8%. Now this isn't exactly bad, but at the same time, I wish it had an OLED display for brighter colors and better viewing angles. Right now, the brightness is at 100%, and to me, this really doesn't look that bright, especially compared to other phones in its range. It really does leave a bit to be desired, and I think a display like an OLED display would definitely make a difference. Having those brighter colors and better viewing angles is definitely just going to make the experience with this phone even better. Now another pro for this phone is the stylus. Now the older version of the Motorola Moto G Stylus had a pull-out stylus, but this one has a pop-in, pop-out stylus, which I think is a lot better. I think having a pop-in, pop-out stylus is not only more convenient and easier to use, but it also just feels higher quality. Another con for this phone is that it has no NFC, which means you can't use Google Pay. This is a little bit of a disappointment, especially these days where Google Pay is becoming accepted in more and more places. It's a really convenient way to make payments, and I like to use it a lot. Since this phone doesn't have NFC, that's an entire feature that you're not able to use, and I think it's really inconvenient that it doesn't have it. Now another pro for this phone is its storage. This phone has 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, which is definitely impressive. To put this into perspective, the entry-level iPhones, which are a lot more expensive than this phone, start out at 64 gigabytes of internal storage with no microSD card expansion, and this phone, storage-wise, has double that. To give you an idea of what this looks like, I have everything that I use on a daily basis downloaded onto this phone as far as apps go, and right now, that's only taking up 15% of the phone's internal storage. Now this is definitely going to be a great benefit if you do things that require a lot of storage, such as taking lots of photos and videos, or if you run larger apps like certain games that take up a lot of space. It's definitely going to come in handy, and even if you do end up using up most of the internal storage, there's always going to be the option to expand it with a microSD card, making it even larger. So overall for this phone, that internal storage is great, and I think that it's a really good benefit that I'm happy to see. Now one big con for this phone is that it doesn't support 5G. These days more and more devices, even the more entry-level ones, are being made capable of supporting 5G, and this phone still doesn't support 5G. To put this into perspective, one of its competitors, the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, is actually able to support 5G, and it's in the same price range. So really, considering that a lot of competitors that are really comparable to this phone do have 5G, it's definitely a big con that this phone doesn't support 5G, and it's really something to think about too. Now another pro for this phone is its cameras. This phone definitely has an impressive amount of them too. Taking a look here, we have a 48 megapixel rear camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. This is definitely impressive, and these features are really useful. This is the normal camera mode of the phone, and it's really great. The quality is crisp and the colors are well balanced. And going into the ultra wide mode, a lot of ultra wide cameras in the more entry level and mid-range phones get a little bit distorted, but this one is really good. I don't see any visible distortion, and it's definitely usable. In macro mode, the most common issue I see in macro cameras is the exposure and focus. With some of the lower end macro cameras, and even some of the mid-range ones too, there's oftentimes a huge glare that gets really distracting and really interrupts the picture. But this one doesn't have anything like that, and it's really not having any trouble focusing either, so that's great. Overall, I think this phone has a really impressive array of features, and the quality of all of the different cameras is really good. Now, another con for this phone is its processor. This phone is getting 4 GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 678 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone a while ago, and it came back with a single core score of 538 and a multi-core score of 1588. Now, these numbers aren't terrible, but at the same time, I definitely expected more from this phone. You're really not going to be able to do a whole lot past mid-range activities, like maybe some photo editing and content consumption. When you get into activities like video editing and gaming and that sort of thing, you're definitely going to see a little bit of a struggle. And really, other Motorola phones like the Moto G9 Plus, for example, have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G processor. And I don't really know why they couldn't have just put the same processor in this phone, since it is at a similar level. Now, the final pro for this phone that I'm going to go over is its clean software that's well optimized. Now, this phone is very easy to use. In one of my previous videos, I talked about some tips, tricks, and hidden features for this phone. And as you could see from that video, it's really easy to use. And even if you're not very accustomed to using Android, it is really intuitive and it's super easy to learn. Very user-friendly, and I definitely can appreciate that about this phone. Now, the final con for this phone is its materials. This phone is made of plastic, and these materials really are not very premium. The phone does have a sleek, modern design. I will give it that. I really do like the hole punch front-facing camera. But as far as the overall feel of these materials, it definitely does feel like plastic, and it really does feel a little bit cheap. And for a phone at this level, I really do think that they could have done better as far as the materials go. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And for more information on the pricing, availability, or just some more general info about the device, be sure to check the link in the description to get all of that. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one.